Hi everyone, Kim Snyder here with the API guys. I have a screencast for you. This is an updated video about how to set up the InfusionSoft API on your server for the first time so that you can write scripts and run things that talk directly to the brain of InfusionSoft. So here's how you do it. We have a step-by-step tutorial and it is on our website, theapiguys.com, and it is in our Learning Center. You can find it under Infusionsoft Tips and Tricks, and it is called Setting Up the Infusionsoft. It is right here, by the way. Getting Started with the Infusionsoft API, the Missing Setup Guide. So if you click on that, it will give you step-by-step instructions about how to do this, and I am going to walk you through those step-by-step instructions. Okay, so if we scroll down, we will find the first step is to download the SDK. So what is an SDK? These are some instructions, code instructions, sort of shortcuts that Infusionsoft publishes that allow developers to talk with their API in shorthand, basically, without having to write a lot of code. And you need that SDK in order to get started. So what we're going to do is we're going to download that. Infusionsoft stores the latest version of that SDK on a website called GitHub. I have a link to it here, github.com/infusionsoft/php-isdk, but you can also get to it by just searching in Google for Infusionsoft SDK GitHub, and you will also find it. And you'll get to a page that looks like this. And the way you download it is you just hit this download zip button here, and it will put a zip file in your download folder, wherever that may be. Now I've already done that, so I'm not going to hit this again, but that's what you're going to want to do, download that zip file. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to get your API key out of your application. So we're going to go to your application. Now this happens to be a sandbox application of ours that I'm working in, VX177. And what we're going to do is we're going to go over here to the top nav. We're going to go to Settings, Admin Settings. And then we're going to click on Application in the left sidebar. And at the very bottom of that will be your API key. Now, if you have this key there already, great. You want to copy that. If you don't, then you'll just want to type something in here, an API passphrase. It literally does not matter what you type in there. Any sort of random phrase whatsoever. You don't have to remember it or know it after that. It's just used as a seed to create this encrypted key. And you can read more about how to create your API key in the user guide, the Infusionsoft user guide. I do have a link to it right here in step 2. Okay, so once we have our key, you're going to make a note of that. And then the next thing we're going to do is we're going to go to that folder, that zip file that we just downloaded. And if you have not already, this is my desktop right here. So I have already unzipped this file. And when you unzip it, it's going to be called PHP ISDK master. I know this is kind of small and I wish I could make it bigger, but it will not let me. So apologies for that. Now, when you open that PHP ISDK master, there's going to be a folder called source. And I want you to open that, and you're going to find inside that con.config.php. And if you open this in a text editor, then you can edit it. And you can do this in any text editor. It could be literally text edit or Windows text editor or a text editor specifically for that purpose. I'm going to open it here in mine, and this is what it's going to look like. So here's what you're going to need to do. Where it says connection name, you're going to say your application name. VX177 is mine. Here where it says application name, you're going to do your application name again. Now where it says API key goes here, that's where you're going to put that API key that you just copied, and one more time application name goes here. So you have 3 application names and an API key. The other thing you want to do is just make sure you did not, when you were copying and pasting this, accidentally put any spaces here in between these colons, or it will not work. So once you're sure you have that done correctly, you want to save that. Okay, so we've now modified this con.config file within that source folder of the zip. Okay, next thing we are going to do after that is, here's a graphic that shows what it's going to look like when you're done. You should know that you need to be very careful with that API key, and you don't want to publish it in any public forums. For example, if you're asking questions in some of the API forums as you get started, you either want to obscure it, or as I've done here, turn it into like a dummy number that's not real. They don't need to know your API key. Think of that like your keys to your front door. You will have to give it to some people, to certain applications, to developers that you trust. However, you definitely do not want to give it to just anyone, and you certainly don't want to publish it on a public forum where someone with less than stellar intentions can get to it and access all of your data with it, so that would not be good. Okay, our next step is going to be set up FTP. Now, I'm just going to very quickly tell you what is FTP, only because I know many of you know what it is. Some of you work with it all the time. However, some people say to me that they do not. And so I just want to really quickly explain what it is. I recommend, if you do not have a FTP client that you work with all the time that you like, FileZilla is a good choice. And FileZilla is a good choice because it is easy, it is free, they have it for both Mac and Windows. There are plenty of others, but this is just an easy choice. Now, what is FTP? For those of you who don't know, well, let me say it this way. You have a web server where your website is hosted, and that's where we're going to put all these files so that you can put your scripts there. Because, by the way, your web server doesn't just have to host your website. It can host other files too, including these API files and scripts. So we're going to go log into your web server with FTP, and we're going to put some files up there. So an FTP client is really like Windows Explorer or Mac Finder for your server. And generally it looks like this. Well, let's go ahead and connect and I'll show you. So you can very easily just put your FTP credentials up here if you want. This is called its quick connect bar. So mine are K Snyder. Put my password in here. Leave port empty and then say quick connect. Okay. And what happens is you'll notice that all these files populated over here on the right hand side. So the left hand side is your computer. So I'm in my downloads folder. Here's my desktop folder. So it's your computer on the left and your server on the right. Now these are all my different websites here, and this is my personal account. Anyway, so this is your server, and inside here are different files and things. Okay, so it's just a way to navigate around. You can drag files from one to the other, this way, that way, between different folders, etc. So think of it as Explorer for your web server. Okay, so that's FileZilla. I did make a note here also that if you don't know how to log in, what your login is for your FTP server, then they did give you that information when you created your web hosting account. So either go dig out those materials or call them or email them, get on their chat. I'm sure they're happy to give them to you. So once we get our FTP set up, then what we want to do is we need to copy some of those files over that we downloaded. So I'm going to use Coda this time, which is what I use instead of FileZilla. Same idea. Here's my desktop on the left and the server on the right. Now the first thing I want you to do is I want you to create when you log in, you should be in your public HTML or your www folder. One of the things you may have noticed is when I logged into, I kind of passed right over it, but when I logged into on FileZilla to my site for the first time, it put me in what's known as the root. Sometimes it will log you into public HTML. You want to look up here and see where you are. If it's just this hash, then you know you're in the root. And most servers will have a folder called either public HTML, like this one, or www. And mine has both, but you can see that's a shortcut actually. So you want to double click on that, and that is where your website lives. And once you are in that public HTML, that is where you want to create a folder called scripts. Now in this case, on this sandbox account, I don't have a public HTML folder. I am actually above that because I'm in a sandbox account. But you would want to do this in your public HTML. Okay? Otherwise, we aren't going to be able to test it, which is what I'm going to show you here in just a minute. Okay, so what I want you to do is I want you to create a folder called scripts, all lowercase, case does matter. And the way you do that in most FTP is just double click, right click rather, and just say new folder. And then it'll give you a new folder and you can just type the name, hit enter, and you have a new folder. You can do the same thing for file. Okay, so I have already created a folder called scripts here. Okay, and I have actually already copied, I already have these things in, but here's what you're going to do. When you have scripts, I'll close this, maybe make it easier. Okay, you're going to come over here to your zip file and you're going to open that up. You're going to get back to that source folder that I told you about. You're going to open source and you are going to copy everything in source over to your scripts folder. Okay? And when you do that, it's going to ask me if I want to replace all this stuff. I'm going to say yes, replace all that. Yeah, I know, replace it. Okay. So mine is going to sit there and run. It is going to, you can see it running over here. It's going to take it a little while. Okay, so you're going to upload these things, and this is what you will need to be able to run your API. Okay, so we're copying the files to the folder. Now, the next thing that you're going to do is we're going to create a little PHP script, and we are going to run it so that we can see that our API connects properly. Now again, I've beat you to this. I've already created this little, we're going to put it in our scripts folder. We're going to call it test.php, and again, the way you do that is by right clicking, say new file, right, name it something, test2.php, okay, hit enter, and you have a new file. So when I open this file, it's going to be empty, an empty file. Now in my case, okay, I've already created test, and it's right here. Now you can copy and paste, but make sure, because sometimes this copy and paste gets a little wonky. It puts extra spaces and things. The other thing you could do is just type this out. It's not that hard. So I've already got it. In fact, I should probably, you know what I'll do? I'll add a link so you can just download this file, and that way you don't have to copy or paste anything. How about that? So here's what you're going to do. You're going to put this in your file. All right, and what this is going to do is it's going to connect to your SDK. Now, the one thing I will tell you is this you need to change to your, whatever your app name is, right? See where it says your connection name? That needs to be your app name, not mine, which is VX177. But other than that, this should all be fine. And if you set your connection up correctly, then what you need to do to test it is go to your browser, pull up an empty browser tab, and you're going to put in the following. Now for me, this is the URL of my server, okay? And I'm actually in a subdomain called VX177. But yours will probably say something like yourdomain.com/lowercase scripts/test.php. And when you hit enter, this is what it should say. It should say, hello world, yabba dabba doo, you are connected to Infusionsoft. If it doesn't say that, then something is not correct and you need to go back and figure out what is not working properly. Okay? And if you just get stuck and you can't figure it out, there are some options. One is our API Learners Facebook group. So if this works, if you're having a problem, go there and someone, me or someone, can help you out. Or if it worked perfectly, let us know that too, that you've gotten connected for the first time, and that's super cool, and we'll high five you for that. If you would like to learn more about writing scripts for Infusionsoft, we do have a free 16-hour PHP class on our website, as well as free code samples. Those are all in the Learning Center as well. So you can find those here in the Learning Center under Learn Enough PHP to Be Dangerous. The free Infusionsoft code samples are here. This is the PHP class is something I did almost a year ago now, March, I guess, 6 months ago. And this is PHP for beginners, basically, with the idea 80-20 PHP, which is that 20% of the PHP is all you need to know to get you 80% of the results. And it is specifically PHP geared at writing scripts for Infusionsoft. So if you want to learn a little bit about that, that would probably be a good place for you to take this a step further. So hopefully you found all of that helpful. As always, I would say if I can answer any questions for you, I'm always happy to do it. So please feel free to contact me. This is my favorite subject, and I do love to help people, as so many people helped me when I was first getting started with the Infusionsoft API. So give it a try. Don't be afraid. You can't break anything. The only way to learn it is to get in there, roll up your sleeves, and get your hands dirty. So hopefully this will be the beginning of a fruitful and profitable relationship with the Infusionsoft API. Thanks.